22-year-old Gabby Petito's homicide in Wyoming has captured national attention, and she is one of many who've gone missing in the state recently. At least 710 Indigenous people, mostly women and girls, went missing in the state between 2011 and 2020, and a vast majority of those are children. For more on those disappearances, I want to bring in Kelsey Vlamis. She is a breaking news reporter at Insider. Kelsey, welcome. So Wyoming founded a missing and murdered Indigenous peoples task force. What was the reason for that?
Hi, Elaine. Thanks for having me. So the task force was founded in 2019, partially as a result from pressure from advocates who had said for a long time that this was an issue that was being under-resourced and not addressed. And so the governor founded the task force, and as a result of that task force, this report was put out in January that basically kind of laid out the extent of the problem. And what the report found was that 710 Indigenous people had gone missing from 2011 to 2020. 85% of those people were kids, 57% were female, so it was mostly girls affected. And it was happening in almost every county in the state. There had been reported kids, so it was really a statewide issue.
You know, I wonder, Kelsey, is this something that is unique to Wyoming, or do other Indigenous communities experience disproportionately higher disappearances and murders?
Yeah, so it's really not unique to Wyoming. Wyoming is just one state where this is happening. But I mean, even our federal government has established in 2019, a presidential task force was established to address this all over the West and in Alaska, where American Indians and Native Alaskans are experiencing disappearances at higher rates than other groups. And so that task force was established in 2019. And then even earlier this year, Secretary of the Interior, Deb Haaland, established a specific unit within the Bureau of Indian Affairs to again look at this issue on a national level, because it's just been going on for so long. And the press release at the time from Haaland said that it's just been so underfunded that a lot of these cases remain unsolved because there's not resources being put towards them.
You know, Kelsey, I'm sure you've seen it as well. There's been a lot said about the inequality of media coverage. I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit and whether the report offers any insights or solutions.
Yeah, so there were quite a few findings. One of the biggest was that in Wyoming, at least, this Wyoming report found that only 50% of homicide victims, 30% of Indigenous victims made the news in the case of homicides, whereas for white victims, it was 51%. So it was a big disparity between Indigenous homicide victims and white homicide victims. And then the other thing that the report found is that the way that Indigenous victims were covered when their homicides were covered was very different. The homicides were often much more graphic. So there were graphic descriptions of either what the body looked like or what the actual cause of death was. And they were also more likely to paint Indigenous victims in a negative light. So it's a twofold issue. It's under coverage, and then also just the way that coverage actually unfolds is very different.
So, Kelsey, what was the reaction in Wyoming when that report was released? Because when you actually have data and you're looking at numbers, it's a very different thing than just kind of talking about something anecdotally.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think a lot of Indigenous communities and organizers almost felt vindicated in some way because it was an issue they had been sounding the alarm on for so long, but the state wasn't keeping track of the data. So I think in that way it was positive, but I think it's also just discouraging to see those numbers, face you. And as far as people who have been working towards this, and I've spoken with, even just this week, in light of the Gabby Petito case and this report being brought up again, a mother whose two of her daughters are unsolved homicides, an Indigenous mother. And I think for them, it's also frustration because, they've been saying for so long, we know this is an issue and no one's helping us with it. So there's some vindication in the sense of we're glad to have the data, but we still just want more action to solving the issue.
Do they feel like things may be shifting? At least having the data in hand is a start. I mean, what else have these parents told you?
Yeah, it's definitely a very welcome change. And Secretary Haaland has also been a very welcome change. They feel that there's real, for the first time versus, it's been going on for decades. They've been sounding the alarm on this. And for the first time in that time, they feel like there is attention going towards it. And so it's very welcome change. They're really just hoping that the task force in Wyoming and on the national level and reports like these and an improvement in data also translates to results.
All right, Kelsey Vlamis. Kelsey, thank you very much for sharing your reporting with us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Elaine.